Une rencontre exceptionnelle pour une personne exceptionnelle, donc le pape du film d'action. John McTiernan est avec nous aujourd'hui. Il a réinventé les codes de pas mal de films d'action des 40 dernières années. Il a formé et influencé plusieurs générations de cinéphiles. Et vous avez la chance de l'avoir avec vous pendant plus d'une heure pour échanger et poser des questions. Je voulais vous dire qu'il signera aussi les objets que vous pourriez lui amener après la conférence. Juste après, vous pouvez descendre à la salle numéro 2 du Théâtre du Passage, il sera là. C'est seulement au maximum 2 objets par personne, mais sinon, il est disponible pour vous. Donc voilà, sans plus attendre, je vous demande de lui faire un triomphe avec notre talentueux modérateur Rafael Wolf, John McTiernan.
Ça fait du bien. Merci beaucoup d'être là. Je voulais juste vous proposer peut-être, pour casser un tout petit peu la routine traditionnelle de ces rencontres, que vous passiez peut-être pas 45 minutes à me voir discuter avec John McTiernan en tête-à-tête et vous laisser les 25 dernières minutes pour poser des questions. Si vous avez envie de jouer le jeu, je vous propose que j'ai thématisé certaines pistes, que au fur et à mesure de ces blocs, si vous avez envie de poser une question que je n'aurais pas posée à l'intérieur de ce cadre, n'hésitez pas à lever la main. Tant que ça s'intègre dans le continuum, je pense que c'est parfait, ça permet d'ouvrir un peu plus le champ de la discussion tout de suite, si ça va pour vous. Vous me dites? Bah voilà, super, on peut commencer. Alors, John McTiernan, déjà, j'ai envie de vous dire comment ça va.
I'll be right with you. Ask me what? How am I feeling? Fine.
Ouais.
I'm feeling fine.
Eh ben parfait. Ça fait quand même 20 ans que vous n'avez pas tourné de film. Le dernier film en date s'appelle Basic, il est sorti en 2003. J'aurais voulu savoir comment aujourd'hui, avec tous les projets que vous avez présentés, dont on a parlé, on a évoqué certains de vos projets depuis déjà au moins une dizaine d'années en disant que vous alliez retourner enfin sur un plateau de cinéma. Où est-ce que ça en est aujourd'hui concrètement, vraiment? Parce qu'on n'en voit pas la fin finalement, on ne sait pas à quel sens se vouer par rapport à votre possibilité de comeback.
Well, I'm not sure I know the answer either. There are lots of people who, it turns out, were eager to advertise me coming back. And I did have a film that was set up for just when COVID started. We're sort of restarting that, I hope, we'll see.
Mais donc c'était un projet qui était produit par un studio hollywoodien?
I'm sorry. No, it wasn't. It's independent. I think the Hollywood studios and I parted ways quite a while ago.
Voilà, justement, on voulait peut-être un petit peu aborder ça rapidement avant de revenir un peu à votre carrière. Donc on peut rappeler quand même les problèmes aussi que vous avez eu avec le producteur Charles Roven sur le tournage de Rollerball. En 2006, il y a eu cette affaire d'écoute. Voilà, vous avez mis sous écoute ce producteur, ça vous a valu quasiment une année de prison que vous avez purgé en 2013-2014. À ce stade, vous avez complètement abandonné l'idée de pouvoir retravailler un jour au sein d'Hollywood, où c'était quand même encore une idée, une volonté, une envie de votre part?
Well, the last 2 films I did were just miserable experiences. One of them, They got me to promise to fix the script. I fixed the script. Then they said they wouldn't use that script, but I couldn't tell the studio that we were shooting the original script that the studio wouldn't buy.
Ça c'est basique.
Yes. And Rollerball, I got in the middle of shooting and they cut the second half of the screenplay. There was a whole lot more to Rollerball. And they made up a movie out of the first half of it, and it was an appalling experience, and I couldn't get out of it, obviously. So I was sort of a captive twice from unscrupulous producers, and I just, you know, after that I really didn't want to work. I would never work with people like that again. So I've only explored or talked about places where I felt safe. As for my legal troubles, I don't want to be an asshole, but it actually was a great experience. No, stop. I'm not kidding. Who is it? What's... the head of South Africa, he just died, not Desmond Tutu, the other one. The head of the South African government. Okay, what is it?
Mandela.
Yes, okay. He said that you never understand a society unless you've seen its jails. Yes? Okay. Well, physically, the place wasn't a jail, it was a college campus in the Midwest. There was no bars, no barbed wire, no nothing. Okay? But it was amazing. Now, physically, it was great for me because in college, I'd been a roofer. So they put me on the carpentry crew. I spent the whole summer up on these roofs with my shirt off like I was 19 again, in the sun, putting roofs on. I had a great time. It was wonderful. Physically, it was great. But morally and informationally, I mean, my profession, if you will, is information. You know, like from Shakespeare, the brief and abstract chroniclers of the time, that's the essence of the profession, is trying to understand what you see and render it in a way that somebody else can understand what you saw. Well, I was astonished. The entire war on drugs in the United States is just a disenfranchisement program. It has nothing to do with drugs. The largest Anglo-Saxon government in the world has entirely given up on trial by jury. You can't get a trial by jury, period. If you have $4 million, you might be able to afford it. I had the $4 million, but they said that if I asked for a trial, that I would get sentenced to 20 years, and the judge would do it, and it would take 3, 5, 6 years before the thing might get thrown out. So it was like there was no choice. And they do that to everybody, particularly anybody who doesn't have $4 million. Now, in the United States, you think a drug conviction is, oh, they caught you with drugs. They can send you away for years and years and years without ever catching you with anything at all. All the prosecutor has to say is, I have 2 guys who will swear that you sold them drugs. Now, those 2 guys may not exist, and no one will ever know because there are no trials, right? All the prosecutor has to say is, I got those guys. That's what goes on. So they can send anybody they want to jail. And in the South, and in a couple of the border states, 30 to 40% of the black and brown people can't ever vote permanently because they were run through this machine of the drug war. It started with Nixon, and every time the Republicans, there is no such thing as a Republican Party, it is simply the Confederacy. Every time they get control of the government, they push the drug laws. And now they've gotten it so that that's how they control Congress, because in all those states, about, as I said, about between 30 and 40% of the black and brown men can't ever vote. So they get, somebody charges them with a drug crime, they go off to be a year, be whatever. They have no choice, they just take what they're told. There's no lawyers. You remember Paths of Glory? The movie Paths of Glory? You must have seen it, right? Okay. The padre in that was the most hateful man in the fucking world. He would escort the man to the firing squad, talking about how God was going to forgive him, when the very fact that he was being murdered for someone's political views, the padre would not even address. Okay, that's what, in the United States, they have these things called public defenders. They're supposed to be lawyers for the people who can't afford lawyers. They're just like that fucking padre. You go there, inside, okay. You watch 40 or 50 kids, mostly brown or black, come up in the dining hall, and they come with their plates, and they all sit down individually, hang on, with their hands like this for a moment. Okay, and what they're doing is they're saying grace privately. Now, being an upper middle class white guy, I didn't believe any of that stuff, and I said, oh, is this some prison religion? Is this some gimmick you guys all worked out so that you could get out sooner or something like that? I didn't say it as offensively as that, but that was what I was thinking. And fortunately, the guy I asked about it was cool. And he just said, no, that was the way we were brought up. And you look at these people, you talk to them. I tried not to waste my time. I interviewed 250 men about what happened to them. And it's not just, a formal interview. I would come back to them over the course of a week or so until I got as much of their story as I could. And you could tell when people were lying, and you could tell what was real. And the stories and the stories of the black and brown guys just completely changed my understanding of the country I live in. Now, if I could make a movie about that, I would, but nobody will let me. So anyway, that's how I think of that experience. I learned an awful lot, and I can't look at anything the same now. You watch how in the States they're destroying public education, because public education is the class enemy of the aristocracy. Every bit of right-wing politics is really economically determined. There is really a group of people who like to see other people poor. That's what they want. Now, in the world I grew up in, that is the epitome of immoral and criminal activity. And it is rampant. It is what runs, unfortunately, the southern half of the United States that often has control. So that was what my experience was. I was very political when I was in college, and after that I said, nah, things are okay. Things are gonna work out fine. You know, and I was like most liberals, the liberal kids say, you know, in our lifetimes, we got a black guy elected president. All that stuff is behind us. Bullshit is behind us. It's not behind us at all. And if I could ask for anything, I would ask that you people find out about it and you exert pressure so you could control it. You know, you're at least half of the economic engine that we all live in. We live in Europe and Europe's daughter, all of us. You know, if you manage to find out there's a real clear definition of what the Republican Party is. You know those maps that are red and blue that you always see about every American election? Right? You've all seen them, right? Okay, well, there is another map, and you can get it from the New York Times, where all the states are sized according to their population. So most of that big stuff in the middle, it just disappears. And the red states, it's the Confederacy. It's 1861. It's exactly the same people for exactly the same reasons. They make money by taking it from other people, and they don't want anybody fucking with it. That's what it's about. Fortunately, the best European ideas took root in the northern half of the United States, and after World War II came back and reseeded itself here in Europe. And you people, we were just talking about this earlier, that's like the most important invention I think anybody's ever done in the last 150 years is Europe. And okay, so why did the English leave? Because a bunch of English aristocrats don't think they're getting their due. That's the only reason. Europe is hugely important and could have a huge voice. And if I could beg anything of you folks, find out there are two dangerous groups of people in the world. There's the Ukraine that still runs Russia, you know. The Tsar's secret police, it's the same organization. They change the letters every now and then, but it's the same organization, okay? And the other was the South African whites. Not anymore, they've got a deal, so it's not so bad. The other dangerous group of people, the Southern whites of the United States. They're the most dangerous people in our, you know, in the pan-European world. They are possessed of evil ideas and will impose them. So, okay, did I answer that question?
Bon, on va revenir un tout petit peu en arrière hein, quand même, puisque voilà. Non, je voulais revenir aux origines, même avant votre premier long métrage Nomads qui est sorti en 1985-6. Je voulais que vous parliez un tout petit peu de vos études simplement. Durant les années 70, vous avez suivi les cours à l'école Juilliard à New York, qui n'est pas une école de cinéma, c'est une école de théâtre. Hein. C'est votre formation. Vous avez un tout petit peu eu visiblement une formation qui vous a préparé au métier du cinéma ou pas, qui n'était pas totalement classique par rapport en tout cas aux autres cinéastes qu'on a vu arriver après. Je voulais que vous me parliez un petit peu de ce que vous aviez appris à ce moment-là dans l'école Juilliard, et est-ce que vous vouliez déjà à cette époque-là devenir réalisateur?
Juilliard was long before I did any films. I thought I wanted to be a film director, a theater director. And I went to New York and I went to Juilliard, which is a theater school, and there I kind of learned that theater directors all have trust funds. I didn't have the trust fund. After that, I went and I went to an experimental college that the State University of New York had, and it only had 40 students, and they had a lot of money, and it was wonderful. And there were just 2 of us, or 3 of us or so, who worked on trying to teach ourselves movies. And anytime we saw a movie, we went and tried to copy the same stuff. Whatever we saw up on a screen, we went and tried to imitate it. I taught myself stop motion animation. I did very primitive effect shots. I did anything I could. And then I went to the American Film Institute in Los Angeles, which is a graduate school for cinema. And then I wrote for 3 years, and then I did Nomads. Okay, now, what was the rest of the question?
Non, enfin, vous avez répondu, mais justement, au moment où vous arrivez pour votre premier long métrage, Nomads, donc, cette histoire d'anthropologie avec un Los Angeles quand même assez particulier qu'on n'avait pas l'habitude de voir aussi à l'époque, avec une tribu comme ça, visiblement de présence un peu fantastique d'Inuit, tout à fait barbare. Enfin, il y a quelque chose de nouveau qui pose d'emblée les thématiques qu'on va retrouver aussi, ou une des thématiques qu'on va retrouver plus tard dans votre cinéma, cette confrontation entre le civilisé, le barbare, ou le sauvage, ou le primitif en tout cas. Le choc des cultures aussi avec les langues. On a déjà des langues où les gens ne se comprennent pas spécialement. Comment vous êtes dirigé sur ce film qui était indépendant, que vous aviez scénarisé vous-même, vous étiez dans une découverte du cinéma en faisant toutes les erreurs possibles, ou est-ce que pour vous c'est l'idéal finalement de ce qu'aurait dû être votre cinéma plus tard avant qu'il ne devienne hollywoodien?
Was it all, did that movie contain everything I wanted to do before? Oh, no, of course not. I'm sorry, I still don't know where to go with that. It was, yes, going to Los Angeles from the Northeast. See, at one point I was always interested in anthropology, and at one point I thought I wanted to be one, an anthropologist. And going to Los Angeles, it was a city in the desert that had, I mean, it seemed that culturally it could have been in the middle of the Sahara, or in the middle of Asia on the Silk Road or something. That all these people came through and they were all, you know, gambling and trying to grab what they could and then get away. So I just wrote a screenplay from my own, you know, experience, my sort of dream experience of moving to Los Angeles. It's kind of primitive.
Et à partir de là, on le sait, on connaît l'histoire, hein, un certain Arnold Schwarzenegger voit le film, l'aime beaucoup, vous engage, enfin demande en tout cas à ce que vous preniez les rênes de Predator, qui sera donc votre première expérience hollywoodienne. Au-delà des anecdotes que vous avez déjà beaucoup racontées sur le tournage de ce film, comment est-ce que vous êtes passé d'un projet comme Nomads à Predator, qui apparemment paraissent très différents, alors qu'on voit aussi à quel point, voilà, déjà votre tempérament de cinéaste est en train de se mettre en place et on vous reconnaît totalement. Vous êtes fondu très naturellement dans cette production qui était assez énorme à l'époque, sans problème.
Well, did I adapt myself to this new style? I'm sorry. If you want to be a movie director, the whole idea, part of the job is you figure out what style this movie should be made in. All right? So, you know, an art horror movie would have one style, and a boys' adventure movie would have a very different style. Now, I was primitive, young, unskilled in how I changed, but I knew what I was supposed to do. I know this is a story. What it was Larry Gordon saw Nomads, and so he sent the movie to Arnold. They asked me to do Commando, the movie that Arnold did earlier, and I promised somebody else that I would do a movie for them. So I had to turn down Commando, but then when they had their next movie with Arnold, they came to me again. And I don't know, I looked at it and I said, okay, that's a perfect sort of no-lose situation. It's a boy's adventure, you know? It's not a... It had no pretensions. I mean, if you reach too far in a movie and you fail, then, you know, the press and the audience will kick your butt. But I could just have fun. They all knew how, because they had just done Commando, they had their own way of working. And they always had this second unit director who did all the action. And he was terrible at it. They thought it was fine, but it took me till about halfway through the movie for me to get a chance. I kept saying, look, can I shoot this instead? And they finally let me shoot the action when the thing where they attack the Palapa and they sweep in and kill all those people. And they saw the way I shot it, and then from then on, I got to shoot all the action. I mean, the second unit director was a lovely man, but he's basically a stunt man who would put a camera on a set of sticks and, you know, do the stunt in front of the camera, and that's it. And I saw the action as part of the movie. And it was just as important as the dialogue. And that it should be shot with just as much care and energy as the dialogue. It's something we were talking about earlier, was not so much here or in France, but in England, they have a disadvantage. They have a 400-year history of theater as text, you know, Shakespeare on. So they think of movies as printed experiences, and they think it's all in the dialogue. And that is something in anthropology called the retarding lead. You know, they had wonderful theater in the 19th century, so they have lousy movies in the 20th century. That's in essence the idea. They were because they thought they knew how to do it, they wouldn't change. Whereas the Italians had the history of opera, which, right? Okay, so they have no difficulty seeing that there's no separation between the dialogue and the action. It's the sweep of the music. And the French cinema pretty much the same way. although they mix philosophy in the middle of it, and that gets weird. But but the Italians just went for it. They had no doubt. They just did it. And I'd seen loads of Italians, so I viewed the action of this boys' adventure movie as the movie. It wasn't the stuff that happens in between the talking. I was perfectly happy to have the stunt guy go film the talking. But I wonder if what happened, you know, because a lot of people talk about, okay, the action movies in the late 80s and 90s were better than stuff that came before or after, whatever. It was the good time. Well, maybe it was part of, there were young filmmakers like me who said, we didn't want this stunt guy shooting the action. We'll do it ourselves. I mean, I wasn't the only guy doing it, but I was one of them doing it.
Bah, on peut parler d'ailleurs de l'autre réalisateur dont on parle beaucoup à cette période-là pour le cinéma d'action, c'est James Cameron. Alors moi j'avais une question à vous poser aussi à ce moment-là, des années 80 et début des années 90. Est-ce que vous connaissiez James Cameron? Est-ce que vous le connaissiez? Est-ce que vous dialoguiez? Est-ce que vous échangiez? Ou est-ce que vous étiez dans une forme de rivalité par rapport à des cinémas, enfin, le vôtre et celui de James Cameron, qui est quand même assez différent si on le regarde de près?
I met him 2 or 3 times, parties, talked to him. I can't claim that we were ever friends. He was always brilliant at the politics of it. He knew how to work a studio, still does. He's very good at that. Aside from the fact that he's a fantastic filmmaker, I mean, Titanic is great, but the sci-fi film is just... Avatar is just amazing. What can I say? Am I envious of him? Of course I am. I mean, he's fabulous.
Très bien, pas de souci, on a répondu à la question. Je voulais revenir un peu sur ce que vous disiez sur la musique auparavant. Alors bon, si on connaît un peu votre cinéma, on voit aussi des recours à la musique. Je ne parle pas du score, hein, mais de la musique classique dont on parle, que ce soit la 9e de Beethoven dans Paillard, que ce soit le boléro dans Basic. Enfin, il y a quand même pas mal de références directes à l'art musical. Et j'ai l'impression quand même, en revoyant en tout cas vos films, que très vite, votre mise en scène, votre façon d'utiliser la caméra est complètement musicale. Il y a vraiment quelque chose de l'ordre d'un personnage qui est en train de danser avec les autres personnages et qui est très circulaire. On en a parlé aussi un petit peu avant. Je voulais que vous me parliez aussi un petit peu de ce moment où vous avez conscience que cette caméra et un montage très particulier justement qui permet à vos films d'avoir ce style existent, prennent forme et que vous êtes dans une parfaite quelque part harmonie entre ce que vous voulez faire formellement et ce que le film devient auprès d'un public.
There used to be all sorts of rules about if you have a camera moving, you can't cut until the camera stops moving, all sorts of stuff like that. And I've been looking at Italian movies that didn't do that stuff. And on Die Hard, I went and got an editor who'd worked with Paul Verhoeven. And his family were musicians. And we actively set out to learn how to cut moving cameras to still shots, or vice versa, or moving shots to other moving shots. You know, for a while until we worked out how to do it, until I sort of understood, felt it. I would shoot multiple takes of things at different speeds, so that he would have, that if the speed mattered, he would have his choice of different moving camera speeds in order to make the cut work. Eventually I stopped bothering with that because eventually it just became a natural sense, and it is a musical sense. I can tell when a shot will cut and when it won't, and I just do it. But we were just working it out then, and you know, there are all these people that work, junior executives at a studio, and the only way they can get themselves promoted is they point out how stupid the director is. You know, they go to the dailies and they say, look at that stupid thing, right? And so they would say about my dailies that, well, wait, that won't cut, you can't do that. And fortunately, I had this editor who was like, what was the Verhoeven film about the guy, yeah, RoboCop. He cut that, right? So he had credibility about action movies. The studio would listen to him, and they called him in and said, "This stuff doesn't cut." And he said, "Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Don't worry, it works fine." And it was about using an active narrator that, well, in anybody that tells a story, whether you're sitting around a campfire or you do it in print on a page, or if you do it in a movie, the narrator is a person, is an implicit character in the story. Do you believe the narrator? Do you love the narrator? Do you think the narrator has wonderful stories to tell and you're looking forward to it? Or is this guy like, I'm not sure I believe it? The character of the narrator is all part of the story, of any story, okay? But if you just have a standard industrial style of filmmaking, you know, master, medium, and close-up that just gets cut, bang, 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 there's no living narrator, or there's just sort of, you know, the machine of the movie studio is the narrator. But I was trying to make it an active narrator. One of the things that I was trying to say right at the beginning with Predator and with Die Hard, I was trying to say to the audience right at the beginning, we're not here to cure cancer. We're just here to have a good time, okay? This is supposed to be fun. This isn't serious cinema, okay? So have fun. And that's important. That's an important message. It tells the audience how to evaluate all the stuff they see. And it seemed to me that one should have control of that message. Because if you don't do it, it's just going to be the advertisers in the studio. It's going to be the poster and that sort of stuff. That the movie needs to have that relationship with an audience. In Die Hard, I was trying to say that the narrator has a sense of humor and likes human beings. Because what I was really doing was a Shakespearean comedy, okay? And that's about how crazy people are. Something happens and they all act very weird. And some of them behave heroically and a lot of them don't. But implicit in those Shakespearean plays like Midsummer Night's Dream is Shakespeare's, the character of who's observing this stuff. And he's telling you how silly they all are, so that you understand what you're seeing and why you're seeing it. So I was trying all the way through, and Die Hard in particular, to say that that the storyteller found these people amusing, as opposed to the way most action movies are done, where they're filled with hate. Which is why, I mean, I get sent, I don't know, 100 scripts a year, people wanting me to do screenplays, and they're all hateful. They're just filled with anger and vision, and they're just filled with shooting people, and they think that's what Die Hard's about. And it's also, you know, the personalities of the people who want to make these movies, I find questionable, because they just want to put hate. It's the only thing they have to talk about somehow, is, you know, let's go murder as many people as we can. And I don't find that entertaining or socially useful or an honorable activity for a decent human being. So I haven't done anything. That's part of the reason that I just, you know, have not made a movie in 20 years. I'm not going to make one of those. And I'm not going to remake badly a movie I already made much better. Why would I bother? It's a stupid activity. If I get the chance to make a new movie, okay. I have this friend, had a friend, he passed away, but he was upper class Viennese, very proper upper class Viennese upbringing. He was taught horsemanship as a boy by this Hungarian horsemaster, you know, like had a patch over, I don't know, but it was really, really like fantasy actor, pre-World War I sort of upbringing. And the horsemaster said that the way you get a horse to jump over a fence is you, the rider, throw your heart across the fence and the horse will follow. Okay? A decent movie is about like that. The filmmaker throws his heart across a fence. He has something he's trying to say or trying to articulate or trying to make something, okay? And if he's very lucky and gets enough momentum, he'll get this huge beast of a movie-making company to come along with him over the fence. And if you're really lucky, you'll land okay and not crash, and it'll be a good movie. But that's, for me, that's always been the process. And it's why I've never wanted to work with somebody who was just trying to imitate something else somebody else did, so that they could make some money out of it. So they could go gamble in Las Vegas or buy girls or get a more expensive wife or It's just, come on. It's, there's an E.E. Cummings line about throwing dead cats in other people's cathedrals. It's that, you know, people who've taken the time to learn filmmaking think of it as a cathedral. And, you know, scumbags who will sell anything at all are violating that cathedral. Is that clear enough?
Complètement. Je vois que le temps passe, je ne sais pas tellement si on peut dépasser un tout petit peu la durée. J'aurais peut-être une question à poser avant de vous passer la parole, si vous le permettez, dans le public. Je voulais juste aborder la question des femmes dans le cinéma, parce qu'on parle sans arrêt voilà, d'un cinéma assez viril, avec beaucoup de personnages masculins, que vous avez d'ailleurs beaucoup, on va dire, malmené, hein, si on se souvient un tout petit peu de ce qui arrive notamment à Arnold Schwarzenegger dans le premier Predator, ou évidemment Bruce Willis dans Die Hard. Mais voilà, vous avez quelques films, notamment le premier avec Leslie Ann Warren, Nomads, qui est quand même l'héroïne, Lauren Bracco dans Medicine Man, il y a Connie Nielsen aussi, qui est vraiment l'héroïne de Basic, et une actrice dont j'aimerais vous entendre parler, qui est assez particulière dans un film qui est un remake donc de Thomas Crown, René Russo, qui est clairement au-dessus de René Russo, Thomas Crown. Ouais. Qui est justement un de vos 4 films très au féminin, avec vraiment une héroïne, avec d'ailleurs, je le rappelle si vous ne l'avez pas vu depuis peu de temps, des scènes de sexe qui sont parmi les seules de votre cinéma, où on voit vraiment, alors René Russo quand même, dans des positions assez torrides avec Pierce Brosnan. Donc je voulais que vous me parliez un tout petit peu de votre relation aux personnages féminins dans votre cinéma. Elles sont rares, mais elles sont fortes, et quand elles sont là, bah, elles prennent vraiment le dessus, je trouve.
They're strong and powerful when they're in my movies. Okay, some of that comes from the Irish American heritage. They're strong and powerful in all the John Ford and John Wayne movies. You know, in all those John Wayne movies, everybody in the town is afraid of John Wayne's wife, and he's married to her because he's the only man in the town who's big enough to deal with her. Huh? Well, that's real in, at least with the Irish Americans. You know, the women are huge, they run the families. And in the heritage I was handed, it's sort of the measure of a man, how strong his wife is. If you see a man with a wimpy, you know, blonde thing on his elbow who will never argue about anything, basically you see a man who's afraid. And that was the way I was brought up, so I don't know. I've always tried to depict women that way. With Renee, it was really interesting. The studio at first thought that we had to get some woman who was known as being very strong and mean and tough, and they had me interview a couple of them, and at one point I phoned back to the studio and just said, I just spent half an hour with the scariest woman I've ever met in my whole life. But there's Robert Redford is better at an awful lot of filmmaking than anybody in the world. He's really, really good. And he made a film called Ordinary People, which is a mystery story about there's something wrong in this family. Somebody in this family is a monster. And you think it's the boy, and then for a while maybe you think it's the dad, but no, it doesn't turn out that way. But at the very end, The surprise reveal wasn't the one that no one thought was the monster. It was Mary Tyler Moore. And it was such a brilliant move, casting her, because everyone who always saw a TV show where she was perky, merry, and sweet, everyone who saw it always knew that in her eyes, there was the soul of Erwin Rommel. You know, she was a tank commander. She was strong as hell. And so he had this movie where at the end of the movie and the big reveal happens, the whole audience is going, I knew it, I've known it all along. And they felt great, right? So the casting, the secret about Mary Tyler Moore dovetailed perfectly with the story he had to tell. Okay. So from that, I said, you don't cast for the beginning of a movie, you cast for the end of a movie. So if at the end of a movie, the woman is supposed to have a heart of gold, then you better get yourself a woman with a heart of gold. Or if it's supposed to turn out that she's a harridan, that she's an evil woman, then you get that woman and you have her act sweet earlier. I wanted somebody who was somewhere near Pierce's age. I didn't want a young little blonde thing. And I wanted a woman who was strong and, you know, and the German word is starker, a starker. And she had a lot of, it was really educational. She had an awful lot of little mannerisms, all women do, to divert or avoid conflict with males. I got this in order to try to help her. I've told this story, but I went and got this woman who had run an S&M whorehouse for her whole life. You know what I mean, S&M? Okay. So she was used to teaching young girls how to be strong with men without being angry. And I got her to spend about a month around Renee. And it had nothing to do with sex. They didn't talk about sex at all. But they talked about power, how to conduct yourself with the man. Because Renee kept going toward anger. And anger is lack of power. If you can just say to the man, no, I don't want to do that, and you're perfectly happy saying it, it's like, oh, that's power. And once we got onto that road, it was a really interesting discovery for her and for me. Because we kept finding all these little places where all women make a gesture or do a thing that avoids conflict with men. And we pulled them out one at a time. So that she would just be perfectly happy and perfectly relaxed and like men, but she ain't afraid of them. That was the intention. I don't remember enough about basic.
Nielsen.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically looking for the same character. I wanted her to be reasonably strong and yet not be angry necessarily. I like depicting women that way. I don't know.
Disons, ce qui est curieux dans Basic, c'est que le film est a priori vendu comme un film avec John Travolta comme héros, alors qu'il suffit de le voir pour comprendre que c'est Connie Nielsen, l'héroïne. Et il y a un leurre, en fait, qui traverse aussi, il me semble, beaucoup votre cinéma, où dans les histoires et dans le casting, des fois on me fait croire que ça va dans ce sens-là et que tel ou tel personnage dirige vraiment l'histoire, alors que c'est en fait parfois complètement le contraire. Et je trouve que dans Basic, c'est assez flagrant de voir que Connie Nielsen est vraiment l'héroïne du film, alors qu'on nous faisait croire que c'était John Travolta.
No, that's, you know, studios and deals and stuff. The script they had, the woman was the detective. Well, that makes her the center of the story, okay? You know, the deal with the studio, and we got enough stars in this and all of that. Fortunately, John Travolta is not a jealous man at all. He's actually a great man. He's a very nice man, genuinely. So he didn't resent the fact that her character was strong or anything like that. It worked fine.
Ok. Vu le temps qu'il nous reste, je propose qu'on passe à vos questions, si vous en avez. Alors, on lève la main, on attend que le micro arrive vers vous. Madame, peut-être juste devant moi.
Congratulations to your career. We had a movie festival in Bern a couple of weeks ago, and we showed Predator and also Die Hard, and we had a full cinema, so people are still loving your movies, and it's actually really that you said that they said like they loved the characters, the storyline. In Bern, that's a city in Switzerland. That was also showing. But yeah, either way. What do you think is your most accomplished movie, or which movie are you most proud of your whole career, and why?
Thomas Crown. It was certainly the most fun. I think it's the most accomplished. It's the closest to what I came out with, was the closest to what I intended. Die Hard is a very ambitious movie, very big movie, and yes, okay, whatever. 13th Warrior, it's a really good boys adventure. I didn't see it for a long time, and I saw it this year, and it's, you know, the horsemanship in it is just fucking amazing. You know, and things like, it's something that I have always viewed as a responsibility. If you're going to work in mass market movies, you should present basically moral things. There are some things that are going on in a society and should somehow, if you can, be reinforced, okay? So, in Red October, I made an admiral who happened to be African American, okay? Now, at the time, there was either none or one guy who got to be an admiral shortly after that. But nothing can happen until somebody imagines it first, okay? And if you make a mass market movie that millions of people see, and there's a bright young white officer, and a big black admiral gives him an order, and the guy says, "Yes, sir," and doesn't think for a moment that there's anything weird about an African American giving him orders. That a moral man just says, "Yes, sir," okay? I'm really happy that I did a movie where the hero was Mohammedan, was Muslim. And I even have him kneeling down and saying prayers as a Muslim at the climax of the movie. Right? And all these tough Vikings look at him and they think it's cool. It's fine, you know? And that, I feel happy about. Inside, I think, okay, there's a social contribution there. Because that's how I think we should all look at each other's the way we worship these various stories about supreme beings. Sorry, I shouldn't talk about that. That religion is a terribly dumb thing to divide people. And I feel very happy, for instance, that that's in that movie. Anyway, to go back to the original question. The work in Thomas Crown is settled. It's like I had control of the instrument. I knew how to work it. I knew what shot was next. I knew what shot was next. I knew every time. You know, there isn't an extra shot. There isn't a, oh, that didn't work out right, and so we fiddled, blah, 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 and got through it. This, you know, it is the concept I started out for, and there it is. Which I always thought of Kubrick's films, I always thought were that way. I thought that he had gotten mastery of the instrument and actually got most of what he had in mind on the screen. Truffaut in his later movies certainly did. You know, La Nuit Americaine and those. He has control of the instrument. He knows how to do it. It's not an accident that he gets through it. And it's not, well, we did the best we could. He actually made the movie. Instead of being, you know, part of the chaos that somehow turned out a pile of sprockets. I feel that way about Thomas Crown.
Thank you, Martin. Just one remark when you said like a man with a strong woman or a man with a weak woman. I thought about The Way We Were with Barbara Streisand and Robert Redford at the end when she meets his new girlfriend, and you know, the girl is lovely. I don't know if you know at the moment of this. No.
Yes, that was exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
And that is implicit in, really, I don't know about Irish films, but Irish American films, it's always been implicit that the strength of a woman is an indication of the strength of the man who's with her. If you see a man who has to get himself with a woman who won't rock the boat, it means you're looking at a weak man. I wish I could have introduced you to my mother. And you would understand what a powerful man my father was.
Alors, on a une question devant. Oui, bonjour. Merci d'être venu. Pour la réussite d'un film d'action, est-ce que la gestion du timing et du montage présente une difficulté particulière? Merci.
Timing. He's asking if in action sequences is timing the center of the idea. Is that the question? In a word, no. It's important, yes, but there are all sorts of other things. Well, part of it, see, is what does the action sequence say is going on? Like, for instance, in Die Hard with a Vengeance, okay, they take this wild car ride through the middle of Manhattan. What are they doing? They're taking a wild car ride. They're demonstrating how courageous and clever they are, okay? Now, in the end of Thomas Crown, Thomas Crown is a Renard story, okay? It's about the fox outwitting the farmer. That's the essence of it. The audience really doesn't care how, you know, how many lasers and nonsense he uses to steal the whatever he steals. They care about how clever he is, how he frustrates the farmer. Okay, so the action sequence at the end of Thomas Crown has no lasers and no hanging from the ceiling and no technical mumbo jumbo. I just tried to make up, okay, what's the essence of this sequence? The fox outwits the farmer and leaves the farmer furious, right? At how clever the fox is. That's the essence of your action sequence. So, trying to do it with lasers, why don't you find a way to do what the essence of what you're doing is? And it's something I've sort of always tried to do. I have this terrible habit of sort of attempting to strip away the social connotation of something and look at what it is in its absolute value, which gets me in loads of trouble about politics. Anyway, I thought that the climactic sequence of Thomas Crown should be the essence of the fox outrunning and outwitting the farmer. And that I should find a physical way to do that rather than a technical mumbo jumbo way of doing it. And out of that, that whole sequence with the bowler hat, man, none of that was scripted. It was in my head, and I had an agreement with the head of the studio that I'd shoot it, but it wasn't scripted. And we just took away, there was 30 pages of scientific mumbo jumbo where he steals the painting. And I just took all of that and I summed it up with one cop, says to the other cop, "Wow, how do you do that?" And the other cop goes, "The audience didn't care. I knew the audience didn't care. Why are we supposed to pretend that they care? Follow the thing you know they care about. If it's a Renard story, they care about the fox. Is he gonna get shot or not? Or can he outwit the farmer?" And so I just went for the essence of the sequence. And to return to your question, any action sequence isn't just action, it's about something. It somehow is part of the story. It just doesn't have words, that's all. But it's got to be in the center of the story somehow, or else it's a waste of time and you shouldn't do it. If you don't know how this advances your story, then it's just a pile of stunts. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't advance the story that you're telling. So you're wasting the studio's money, you're wasting your time, it's just, so I guess one would start from there. What is the story activity of this action sequence? What is that supposed to tell the audience? And then you work downward from that in a whole tree of decisions down to, you know, what kind of camera you use and what stunts are in it and that sort of stuff. But the place you start is, what's the story point of this action thing? I hope I've answered your question.
Oui, on va passer à une autre question. Il nous reste à peu près une dizaine de minutes, monsieur.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you worked with actors, especially when it comes to big stars. How did you handle them? There's a lot of young filmmakers in the audience, and yeah, we all know that, especially when you get around to work with bigger actors, they can be a bit intimidating maybe sometimes. So yeah, how was it for you especially to work with big stars?
A director's task is to take care of the actor. It's really simple, actually. They all have different ways of working. They all have different gifts or different problems. I would always try to work with good professionals, because I never thought of myself as Svengali or anything. I like the professionals, but they are all different, and it's to the young filmmakers here, your task is to take care of them. Figure out what makes them tick, how it is they will do their best work, and you try to shape your production process to that. Okay, for instance, I do these things with a moving camera, right? So the first couple of takes, usually we haven't gotten it right. But you have to try to make sure that you get the camera right by the time the actor gets to his good take. Most actors get to their good take around take 5. You get to take 8, you're wasting your time. Go on, come back later. But around 5, they've gotten a hold of it and they've found the thing that works best for them. So it's usually, it's not hard to make sure that the camera gets its timing right and the moves right by take 5. So you all arrive at a completed shot together. Now, Sean Connery, on the other hand, is best to take 2. So you better fucking make sure that camera crew is on take 2. Because Sean will be polite, but people ask me about, you know, a lot of people were afraid of Sean. Sean, as he got older, he got pretty tough. People would say, well, how did you, you know, he's so scary. And there's a way I just remembered, something I remembered from childhood, that explains it all, because I had no trouble with Sean. He was just like somebody out of my family. I was talking about my mother, okay. Okay, here, now wait. Okay. My mother was an only child, raised as an only son. Her father. I was 3 years old. I had a little wooden spoon. I was sitting out in front of the dairy barn where he was a dairy farmer. And it was sort of raining, and I was sitting out there as a 3-year-old child playing with this wooden spoon in the dirt. having a perfectly nice time. My grandfather, my mother's father, came out of that barn, walked over to this little 3-year-old child on the ground, and took the spoon out of his hands and said, "I spent my entire life getting out of the mud. I will not have my grandson play in it." You think I had trouble with Sean Connery?
On a le temps, je crois, pour une question, c'est juste. Voilà, je vois un bras qui se lève là-bas. Voilà.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm gonna come back again to Thomas Crown affair and your point about narration. I was wondering, the whole movie, if I remember correctly, is bracketed by the conversation with the therapist, right? Was that a choice of narration, or was it a neat way to get Faye Dunaway into the remake somehow because the studio wanted it?
The studio didn't want it, I wanted it. There's a problem that happens with remaking movies. There's a rule, actually, in Hollywood: you should never remake a successful movie, because you'll get killed. Only remake bad movies that had a good premise and were badly made. Which was initially my plan with Rollerball, but we'll move on from that. One, talking to his shrink was a great way to have him say stuff that we wanted the audience to know. But also, having Faye Dunaway in the movie, in effect, blessed the movie. Her presence said to the audience, it's okay, you can like that movie and like this movie, and you're not being, you're not betraying the original movie. You see what I mean? And it helped a lot. It kept the partisans of the original movie from piling onto us in the press. Just because, you know, she was part of it. And also, I wasn't remaking the same movie. I was taking the same situation, but making it a very different movie. You know, that's a caper movie, or, well, I don't know what you'd call it. It was so much a part of the time. It was a failed love story. And I wanted to make a successful love story. But having Faye in it made it sort of a continuance. It was all, you know, a body of work somehow. And you could like this movie, and even though you liked the first movie, it was okay. It was okay. Her presence said, it's okay. Have I answered your question?
Ben, merci, je crois qu'on doit arrêter. Merci encore beaucoup, John McTiernan. Merci à vous d'être venu, d'avoir posé ces questions, et très belle journée à tout le monde. Merci encore.